Welcome to Pillowtime Lore. This is your soft corner of the night, a place where stories live like warm embers, glowing in the dark. Before we begin, take a moment to slow down. Let your body melt into whatever holds you, your bed, your chair, or that cozy blanket wrapped around your shoulders. Feel how the day begins to drift away, piece by piece, as if it never belonged to you in the first place. Outside your window, the night is calm. The world has quieted down, and the sky has dressed itself in stars. Imagine gentle snowflakes floating in the distance, each one falling without hurry, without noise, just a silent rhythm to remind you that everything is allowed to slow. And here, in this moment, so are you. The glow of a fireplace flickers softly nearby, its warmth wrapping around you like an embrace. The golden light catches on shelves of books, on soft pillows, on every little detail that makes a room feel like home. You breathe in, and the air feels gentle, safe, peaceful. You breathe out, and the weight of today slips further and further away. There is nothing you need to do right now. No expectation, no demand, only rest, only stillness, only the quiet anticipation of a story that will soon take you by the hand and guide you through places that exist just beyond the edge of dreams. So, let the rhythm of your breath carry you deeper into calm. With every inhale, feel your body fill with ease. With every exhale, imagine the clutter of the day dissolving like mist. You are free now, free to wander through the world of tales where time is slower, and every word is a lantern leading you further into comfort. This is Pillowtime Lore, and tonight, a story awaits you. The Glass Kingdom shines like a million stars under the sun. Every palace glitters with polished walls of crystal. Every street gleams like frozen water. Yet perfection comes at a price. In this kingdom, silence is law. No loud sounds, no running, no dancing, no disorder. Every step must be measured, every voice lowered into a whisper, because one mistake could send a crack racing through the glass and bring down a wall or a tower. People move as if they are shadows gliding through their own homes, afraid to laugh too loud, afraid to sing too freely, afraid even of joy. Children grow up learning to walk on tiptoe and to swallow their giggles. Merchants trade in hushed tones. Guards patrol like ghosts with soft leather on their boots. The air feels heavy, not with noise, but with the weight of restraint. Safety is treasured, more than freedom, order more than happiness. Yet, in the middle of this shining stillness lives Myra, a young woman with restless eyes that search for something beyond fragile beauty was meant to be. Her heart beats faster when she hears a distant bird cry from outside the walls. Its sound feels alive, wild, untamed, everything the kingdom is not. Even the smallest joy feels forbidden here. When Mira dares to hum softly to herself, she feels the eyes of neighbors watching. The fear of being caught pulls her into silence. Again, yet the spark of defiance in her heart refuses to die. She begins to wonder if safety without freedom is not life at all, but only a glittering cage. Mira could no longer live in silence. Her chest felt too tight, her voice too heavy, her spirit too restless. So she began to test the edges of her cage. At first, she only hummed under her breath while sweeping the glass floor of her small home. The sound was soft, fragile as a whisper, but it carried something forbidden. Life. When she walked the streets, she sometimes let her fingertips brush against the crystal walls, tapping lightly to hear the echo sing back, like a heartbeat hidden inside the glass. She saw no guards glance her way, no citizens daring to notice. But Myra knew the cracks had begun. One evening, she let herself laugh, quietly at first, then louder, until she startled even herself. The sound rang inside her chest like freedom trying to escape. She pressed her hand to her mouth in fear, but deep within her, something glowed brighter, something no law could put out. Days turned into weeks, and Mira grew bolder. Sometimes she stomped her foot harder than necessary, just to feel the glass shiver beneath her. Sometimes she hummed an old tune her grandmother once whispered about the world before silence. Each small act felt like a spark, and together they built a fire inside her that no water could drown. She realized then that living cautiously had dulled her spirit, made her a shadow instead of a soul. The kingdom had given her safety, but stolen her freedom. What use was beauty if it cost the sound of laughter? What use was perfection if it silenced the human heart? For the first time, Mira felt the intoxicating pull of rebellion. Her dreams filled with visions of running, singing, living without fear. And though the cracks in the walls were still too small to see, the cracks in her heart had already spread wide open. Curiosity burned inside Mira like a secret fire. Whispers of an older world would not leave her mind. She had heard fragments from her grandmother before the elders silenced her with fear. Yet those fragments lived inside Mira like unfinished songs. And one night she decided she could no longer live with half-truths. The palace had a hidden wing, a place no ordinary citizen dared to enter. Its doors were guarded not by soldiers, but by silence itself. 4 people believed that even speaking of it would bring punishment. But Mira was not afraid. Her feet carried her through narrow alleys, past shimmering towers, until she reached the forgotten gate beneath the palace walls. Inside lay the archives, dusty chambers where scrolls and tablets were sealed away, stories the kingdom wanted buried. Mira's heart pounded as she unrolled the first parchment. What she read made her hands tremble. There had been a world before glass, a world alive with sound, streets filled with shouting markets, children laughing, drums echoing in the night. The chaos, the clatter, the wildness of it all, messy and imperfect, yet dazzlingly alive. Mira realized then that the kingdom had not been built for beauty, but for control. Revealed the same truth: freedom had once been theirs. Voices had once risen, without fear. And as she read, she felt the cage around her spirit tighten and then begin to break. She no longer saw her kingdom as glorious. It was hollow, a shell of silence. A thought took root in her mind, sharp and unstoppable. Maybe the kingdom did not need to be perfect to be magnificent. Could rise and hearts could live unchained. Word of Myra's defiance spread faster than whispers could be hushed. Her small acts of humming and laughter seemed harmless to many. But in a kingdom of silence, even the smallest sound was dangerous. The palace guards watched her steps more closely. Her name was carried into the throne room, where the king listened with cold stillness. The king was a man carved from ice, his face stern, his voice sharp as breaking glass. When Mira was summoned before him, the air itself felt heavier. He sat on a throne of crystal that shimmered like frozen fire, and around him the courtiers stood in silence like statues. He spoke her name once, slowly, then told her that rebellion was not courage, but ruin, that a single reckless sound could bring pain not only to her, but to the entire kingdom. His words fell heavy like stones, but Myra's eyes did not lower. She listened, and in the cracks of his voice she caught something unexpected. Fear. It was quick, hidden beneath authority, but she saw it. The flicker of a man who was not only protecting glass walls, but also hiding a trembling truth. Was he afraid of chaos, or of people awakening to what lay beyond silence? Mira felt her resolve harden. If the king himself feared awakening, then awakening was the very path she must walk. She left the palace with her heart burning brighter than before. His warning had not broken her. It had lit her like fire in the dark. On her way through the streets, she smiled at a child and hummed softly. The child laughed. Others looked away nervously. But the sound stayed in their hearts. From that day, Mira moved quietly yet powerfully. Her defiance no longer only hers, but a seed she planted wherever she went. Each smile, each hum, each stomp of her foot begun to grow. Mira's courage was a spark, and sparks never stay hidden for long. In the beginning, it was only children who dared to follow her. Tiny feet stamping against the glass streets with playful rhythm, each stomp leaving faint tremors that echoed softly like forbidden drums. Their laughter rang out before their mothers hushed them, but the sound refused to disappear. It lived in the air long after silence returned. Women soon joined, humming faint tunes while working. Songs passed down in whispers from grandmothers who still remembered faint echoes of the world before. At first, the notes were trembling, scared to exist, but then stronger, bolder, as if the voices had been waiting all along. These quiet melodies slipped through the alleys and into the ears of neighbors who could no longer pretend they were deaf. The elders began speaking too, gathering small groups in dim corners to share stories of nights filled with drums and laughter. Stories that had once been forbidden, yet when told now, they felt alive, sparking memories the people never knew they carried. The listeners leaned in closer, hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and wonder. Soon, the kingdom itself began to tremble, not with war, but with joy. The glass towers shimmered with thin lines of cracks. The pavements groaned beneath the sudden liveliness of footsteps. Walls that had once stood flawless now carried marks of unrest. Every crack was proof that silence was no longer absolute. The citizens felt the risk. Yes, their eyes darted to the guards. Their voices sometimes broke with nerves, but alongside fear was exhilaration, a sharp sweetness they had forgotten for generations. The sweetness of being alive, the thrill of feeling their hearts beat not for survival, but for freedom. And all of it began with Mira, one spark becoming many, one voice becoming a chorus. The silence of the kingdom no longer whole, but fractured with light. The day came when Myra's song rose too high, too clear, too fearless. She had been standing in a narrow street, humming to herself, when the melody slipped into words, soft at first, then stronger. People paused to listen. Children smiled. Elders held back tears. For a heartbeat, the street felt alive with something ancient. Then the guards arrived. They seized her by the arms and dragged her across the shining pavements. Her voice silenced, but her spirit unbroken. Citizens watched from windows, fearful yet stirred. Her name echoed in whispers as she was pulled toward the palace. Mira, Mira, the girl who dared. Before the throne she stood tall, despite the weight of chains. The king's gaze was sharp as shattered crystal. His voice colder than winter. He declared her guilty of endangering the kingdom. Her punishment exile beyond the glass walls, never to return. Her heart ached as she walked through the gates for the last time. The only home she had ever known glittered behind her like a jewel she could no longer touch. Yet as much as sorrow gripped her, there was also a strange lightness. Beyond the walls, she breathed air that carried no rule, no silence, only space. Inside the kingdom, her absence did not silence the people. Instead, it ignited them. Citizens began defying small rules, letting their footsteps fall heavier, sharing forbidden tales. Humming under their breath, Myra's courage had become theirs. Her exile had planted rebellion like seeds in hidden soil. Alone in exile, Mira felt the bittersweet truth. Freedom was not given without cost. It demanded sacrifice. Yet even in her solitude, she knew she had chosen rightly. Her voice might have been taken from the streets. It only carried her closer to the truth. She wandered the silent lands, beyond the shining city, until her path led to the abandoned cliffs. Dark, jagged stone, rising high above the fragile kingdom. She climbed with scraped hands and burning lungs until she stood at the very edge. Below her stretched the glittering towers and streets of glass, so flawless, so delicate, so breakable. Her heart thundered as she looked down at the place that had cast her out, the kingdom that had silenced her voice, yet feared her courage. Anger pulsed within her, but so did hope. She had been thrown away, but her spirit still belonged to her people. She would not let exile end her song. Drawing in a breath as deep as the sky itself, Myra opened her mouth and screamed. The sound tore from her chest, raw and untamed, echoing across the cliffs, rushing into the air like a storm. Her cry struck the kingdom below like thunder against crystal. Windows quivered, towers hummed, streets vibrated with invisible waves. The people froze, then shivered, not from fear, but from awakening. Her voice carried into their bones, into their hearts, stirring memories of laughter they had buried, desires they had silenced, dreams they had abandoned. Some wept, some clutched their chests, some whispered her name, Mira, Mira. The glass kingdom itself began to tremble, not from violence, but from longing. The very walls that had stood as symbols of control now shuddered beneath the sound of courage. Cracks crawled faintly along the towers. Mira's scream faded into the wind, but its echo lived on. She realized then that fear itself was fragile, fragile as glass, and that courage, when released, could shatter even the strongest cage. The scream that Mira released from the cliffs did not fade. It lived inside the hearts of the people. One by one, then all at once, they began to rise. Children stomped their feet with wild joy. The sound rang across the streets like drums, waking after centuries of silence. Women lifted their voices in song, soft at first, then louder, clearer, like streams turning into rivers. Men clapped their hands, shouted, laughed. Noise became freedom. The streets of the glass kingdom shook. Each footstep sent cracks racing across the pavements. Each cheer made the towers groan. The city itself seemed to resist, yet yield at the same time. Guards tried to quiet the people, but their commands were drowned beneath the chorus. Order was slipping away like sand between fingers. Panic and exhilaration mixed together. Some citizens fled into their homes, clutching at their ears, afraid of the trembling walls. Yet even they could not hide from the pull of the awakening. Their own hearts thudded louder than they ever had. Others danced in the middle of the streets, spinning and stamping like waves crashing against fragile shores. From above the cliffs, Mira watched her kingdom unravel into chaos and beauty. What had once been silent and still now pulsed with raw life. Her people, messy, flawed, yet human. She saw cracks, spider webbing across palaces that once seemed eternal. She saw light reflecting off the broken pieces, like stars scattered across the ground. The great tremor was not destruction alone. It was rebirth. The moment when chains snapped and voices no longer asked for permission to exist. The kingdom she had loved and hated was falling apart. Yet, in its fall, it became alive again. A place that, for the first time in generations, belonged to its people, not to silence. The great tremor shook the kingdom to its core, but it was not the end. Mira knew the final blow had yet to come. She climbed higher and higher until she reached the tallest tower of the glass city, the very heart of the kingdom, the place where silence had once ruled absolute. Beneath her, the streets writhed with chaos, people shouting, singing, stomping. The city, groaning under the weight of freedom, returned. The wind roared around her, shards already raining from trembling walls. Her body ached from the climb, but her spirit blazed brighter than ever. She spread her arms wide and filled her lungs with the wild air. Then, with every ounce of strength and fire inside her, she screamed. The sound was no longer only hers. It carried the voices of every child who had stamped their feet, every woman who had sung, every elder who had whispered stories. It was the voice of a kingdom breaking free. The scream tore through the sky and crashed into the city like a storm. The towers shattered first, splintering into rivers of light. Then the palaces collapsed like waterfalls of crystal. Streets cracked wide open. Windows burst into a storm of shards. The entire city exploded into brilliance. Millions of fragments raining down like falling stars. Yet, instead of blood and ruin, there was life. The glass crumbled away to reveal soil beneath. Dark, fertile earth that had waited hidden for generations. Citizens stumbled into it, stunned but unharmed, their feet sinking into the ground as if touching life for the first time. Fear turned into awe, silence turned into song. What had been a kingdom of perfection was gone, but in its fall, something stronger was born. The people understood then that sometimes what must be destroyed is not life, but the fragile cages that hold it. The night had been long and wild. The echoes of Mira's final scream still hummed in the hearts of the people. But as dawn broke, a new silence fell over the land, not the silence of fear or chains, but the soft silence of beginnings. The sun rose, slowly painting the sky with gold, and rose, and the citizens blinked at the horizon as if seeing it for the first time. They stood barefoot on solid ground, the glass dust beneath their toes, sparkling like tiny stars. But what mattered more was the soil, the rich earth, warm and alive. Mira pressed her palm into it. It was messy, uneven, and imperfect, but it was real land. In that imperfection lay the promise of life together. The people began to move. Some laughed, some cried, some sang, and soon the ruins, filled with a music unlike any the kingdom had ever known, children chasing one another through the soiled elders, clapping their hands in rhythm, voices rising freely into the air, no one afraid of being punished for sound anymore. Myra stood among them, smiling through tears, her body weary, but her spirit unbroken. She whispered to herself, sometimes you must break the world to find the truth. For the first time, she felt the truth settle into her chest. Like peace, perfection had never been the answer freedom had. The people began to build with their hands, with stone pulled from the earth and wood gathered from the wild there. New kingdom would not gleam like glass, but it would stand strong, it would breathe, and bend, it would sing. As laughter and music wove through the morning air, the people embraced a life that was no longer fragile, but free, ready to shape a world of their own making.